You're watching Gale at Night.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Gale at Night. Thank you all for coming through. Let me go ahead real quick and greet my people in the chat. Thank you all for coming through so early. Shout out to Brutally Honest Good Bread in the building. He was here 2 days ago. Shout out to him. Shout out to Private Nobody. And always shout out to JBWR, Successful MD. And we got Grizzo Ryder in the building. What's happening? Salute to you and Miss SS. Thank you all for coming in early in the live stream. I appreciate you for coming through. I have an interesting live today for you guys, and I hope you enjoy it as well as take something from it. That is the goal for my channel, that you do leave here knowing something or learning something or getting something in return for your time. Today, well, actually what happened, let me tell you how I decided to do this particular live stream. So can you hear me okay before I get to running my mouth? Press 1 if you can hear me. It may be an echo in here, but if you can hear me clearly to at least hear what I'm saying, understand what I'm saying, put a 1 in the chat for me, please. Thank you, Successful MD. Thank you. 1. Okay. Is there an echo a little bit in here? I think it may be a little bit of an echo, but I think we can get through it. Okay. Thank you. So, last week or week before last, I believe, I was scrolling through the internet and minding my business, and I ran into a video. That kind of, it was kind of interesting to me. And some of you may already know that I am a member of Women Against Paternity Fraud. So that's probably why that was in my feed. It was a video about a woman who committed paternity fraud. So I watched the video, and originally I was going to react to the video at a certain point, but I decided that it would be best to talk about the entire video. And the video is in its entirety, because it has, to me, in my opinion, based on what I heard, it has like a mental, like something is going on mentally in this lady's head. Something is off, in my opinion. So I already invited the paternity coach, as I think some of you in the chat have already met him. He's been on my channel before. We had an amazing live stream about paternity fraud. If not, it's on my channel. And I also advocate for mandatory DNA tests at birth for the reason of the paternity fraud. So I did invite the paternity coach here. His name is Cornell Smith. I also invited my dear colleague, my good friend, Gary Nelson, who's a licensed therapist in the state of New Jersey. So I thought they could both provide some input on this particular video and some insight. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them up. Let me go ahead and salute to you, Excel Pro. Thank you for coming through. Thank you. Let's go ahead. Let's bring up Mr. Cornell Smith. Thank you for coming up. How are you? Nelson, are you ready?
Hey, Gail, how are you?
Hey, Mr. Smith, how you doing? Thank you, guys.
I'm doing well. How you doing, Nelson?
All right, how you doing? How's things going?
Doing well.
Good.
Yeah. So, Mr. Smith, if you don't mind, real quick, you want to give us a little quick intro about yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks for allowing me to be on Gale at Night. I am Cornell Smith. I am known as the Paternity Coach at thepaternitycoach.com. I have been a moderately successful men's rights activist and lobbyist, been successful in getting laws changed and forming groups to help them change laws in multiple states. And I've taken my own case to the United States Supreme Court on an issue called paternity fraud. Mm. And there are 4 major ways this happens to men and boys across the country. And the sad thing is that out of those who get tested, roughly 1 out of 3 men and boys who get tested turn out to not be the fathers. And in my opinion, they shouldn't be trapped by law and forced to go to jail. And I'm also the author of the book, Trapped by Law.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for that beautiful introduction. I have highlighted his book on on one of my live streams as well. We'll be showing that and putting the link in the chat to the Amazon link for his book, Trapped by Law. And Mr. Smith, your wife wrote a book as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. She just released it in December of
Congratulations.
2024.
Amazing. So we're going to get that link for that book, and we'll also be sharing that to with our audience as well. Thank you so much again for joining me on this topic.
Well, thank you for the invite.
All right, Mr. Gary Nelson, you want to give us a little bit about yourself, and you have any tell us how to find you as well.
Yes, my name is Gary Nelson. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a nationally certified counselor. I work with children and adults on a wide range of mental health issues, depression, anxiety, inside of schools, peer pressure, bullying, relational issues. So I do cover a wide range of mental illness and also personality disorders. So I do a lot of work in narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial borderline, just a wide range of different mental health illness and disorders. I also write children's books for mental health to help elementary school children deal with some of the disorders or some of the illnesses that may not have a name to them at that early age. So to help them recognize certain signs and certain symptoms and how to deal with it inside of their everyday lives, as well as things parents can do to help educate themselves and work with their children on developing communication and relational skills. My channel is Drama Therapy Hub is currently still under construction. There is some content up there, but there is a lot of new content that is coming very soon that is going to be the new direction of the channel. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nelson. I've always been so admire how much work you do in the community in general, but especially the Black community in your area, because we are the last ones to seek therapy. And you're tackling the youth, which is where it needs to start. Because if you wait till you get like my age, sometimes it's a long road, long, hard road. So I appreciate you for your work that you do as well. Thank you. Mr. Smith, Mr. Private Nobody in the chat said he got your book. He got your book actually during my last live, the live I did about paternity fraud, the one that we did a while back. I re-aired it, and he got your book during that live stream. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And shout out to Private Nobody for getting a copy of it. And I hope we can get some of the information and help others not be trapped by law.
Absolutely. So you two had an opportunity to watch the video that I was talking about regarding the paternity fraud.
I had seen it I think maybe a year ago.
Okay, I remember you telling me earlier you had saw it before.
Well,
and
I saw her.
Do it.
Yeah, well, when I saw her face, I was like, oh yeah, I remember her.
Okay, so you heard the story, but you didn't see that particular interview.
Well, it was kind of hard to watch it while I was driving in my in my 4-wheel audio library.
Well, okay. Well, we're gonna watch it tonight, guys, and I want to kind of get these two gentlemen's input on what they see in this video. As far as, well, for Mr. Nelson, I wanted to get his input as far as any mental illnesses, or no one is being diagnosed here. We're just looking at some cues and some signs in her behavior during this interview. So I wanted to get his input on that and discuss the paternity fraud in general with Mr. Cornell Smith with us as well. I'm gonna go ahead and play this video. Some of you may already seen it, but if not, y'all sit back for a minute. We'll grab this video and let's see what we can see what you guys think.
Little
Tell
town.
me about your childhood growing up.
I had both parents in the home. It was a fairly okay childhood. I had my dad in the home, but my theory is he stopped paying attention to me when I got a mind of my own. So him and I haven't been close my whole life. We are now. But my mom is my rock, my absolute best friend and soulmate.
You're close to your mom.
Oh yeah, most definitely. She's my best friend.
What would you say is the roughest part of your childhood?
The roughest part of my childhood was probably watching my parents get into some legal trouble when I was very young. I didn't even find out what they did until I was 15 or 16, but the house got raided and I watched my parents get taken away. So
What were they doing?
they were drug dealers. So, but everybody's clean and sober now and doing really well.
Good. How far did you go in school?
Oh, I graduated. I graduated from my local high school in Griffith.
What kind of kid were you in high school?
I was a good kid until I turned 16. And then I started smoking weed, skipping school, doing drugs, drinking. I actually got expelled December of my senior year for having Xanax on me. And my mom had called the school and told them. So I did get arrested. I just turned 18 at 18 for having drugs at school. And then I kind of continued to get arrested on and off and crash multiple vehicles on drugs until I turned 21 when I got clean for good.
For good.
For good.
Good for you.
Yeah, been 12 years.
That's great.
Thanks.
And where has your life gone since then?
It's better now. I mean, I'm a mom. I have 2 children. I'm a provisional community association manager for HOAs. I live in Reno. I just have the best boyfriend I could ever ask for. So it's been different, but where I'm at right now is good.
What have you been through between the boyfriend and moving or leaving high school?
So I moved to Reno with a man that I had known in person for just a month or so. I met him through the company I was working for. He ended up not being the nicest man ever, but I followed him to Reno, and I was with him for almost a decade. But I probably wasn't the best wife to him.
For me, just in the beginning of this interview, I know she's of age, but she has a very more of a kitty, childish behavior, the way she won't sit still, the way she is acting during this interview. What did y'all take from that, just for her behavior in the beginning? How she's interacting with the interviewee?
Yeah, she does seem like really bubbly, energetic, playful. And it does have like a youthful air to it. And I mean, she said a lot of heavy things just to like let off with. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I mean, having 2 parents that are drug dealers and legal trouble, everything that comes along with that, like these are big disruptions to like your childhood experience. I mean, and she even followed up with like even the way she talked about some of the behaviors that she was doing that are considered like acting out, like getting into the drugs and getting into like different risky behaviors and getting in trouble. You almost don't feel like it's such a bad thing because the way she's presenting it is in this very playful, yeah, I was just doing this. So it's like the information doesn't match like the emotion. So I mean, that's a terrible upbringing to have to deal with that.
Right. And she's speaking as if it's just, oh, well, I went to the park and I had met some friends, but these are very traumatizing times. And I guess it's during her development stages in life. And this is how she
But you have to think about kids and dealing with difficult things. Sometimes kids will create this kind of bubble around them to where they picture everything as being great
Mm-hmm.
because they have to. It's a survival mechanism. I have to find the positive in everything. What's really happening in my life isn't really what's happening. I'm kind of creating my own fantasy world and way of looking at it as it's a protective mechanism to kind of avoid some of the actual very serious things that are going on at that time. So I would actually I kind of understand that. I kind of empathize with that.
Yeah. Mr. Smith, did you have input on this part here, or?
Well, sure. Um, as our esteemed colleague there, Nelson, just said, she does have a less than ideal background, and I don't think probably anybody has an ideal one, but hers is definitely going to be wrought with a lot of special challenges and dealing with law, and I think that could possibly alter or warp one's sense of right and wrong. A statement my wife used to tell me right after we first got married. I would tell her, well, something just makes sense and people should just get it, right? And she'd say, but it depends on what their environment was that they grew up in. And what's normal to you may not be normal to them on the basis of background, familiarity, and what they were taught. And I do also see that she does come across as a little bit juvenile.
Mm-hmm.
And, knowing now that she's a wife, she's had a couple of kids, and she's had multiple boyfriends while she had a husband.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that.
Into that.
I think those value judgments about, when to do right and when to not do things, her boundaries could be somewhat different. And that, I think that would that gives an indication of why men who are choosing to date for marriage need to be aware of some things about the background, and there should be a level of transparency between the guy and the woman who are about to get married. And if there's a need for work that needs to be done, like personal therapy, things that they need to address from their childhood, because I don't think either the man or the woman should try to make their spouse responsible for things that they've endured that have happened to them, and neither person is responsible for the other person's happiness.
All right. We're going to get into it. Before I go any further, I'm going to give a shout out real quick to the newcomer, Mr. Doug MPA. Thank you for coming through, Mr. Doug MPA, and hit that like button for me. I appreciate that so much. If you haven't hit the like button already, please do so. Like and share. Sharing is caring. What the successful MD say? Was she really married to the man as she described him? Well, we're going to see here in a minute. And you said it's delusional, definitely delusion and coping mechanism. Right. All right, let's move on.
So we got divorced in July of 2020, I believe.
You were married how many years?
We were married 6, together almost 10. Yeah.
You guys had problems?
Yes, we both had our own sets of problems. Like I mentioned, he wasn't very kind. So he did lay hands on me, be very rude to me, make terrible comments, call me names, put me down. But then I was unfaithful a few times and ended up mothering children from those men on my husband.
So you were married to your husband, but you were having children with other men.
I was. And he raised them as his own and knew them to be his own until the divorce.
How did that news come out?
My lawyer had to use language in what we wanted to kind of make it a point to say that, like, he may not be the dad, like, I don't even remember what word she used, but it was a word that kind of made his lawyer be like, we should probably do a DNA test on these children. And he did.
Because you're looking to keep it quiet
I wouldn't say that.
to collect child support?
No, oh no. The divorce agreement said no child support on either side. We were both making the same amount of money. So to this day, neither of us pays child support.
I like that part, that they didn't have him paying child support, at least. Not saying that this any of the rest of the stuff is any good, but at least that part right there, he's not out of after the divorce, he's not out of any money for child support. But I'm sure he took care of these children while they were in the marriage. So that part I was good. I'm glad about that.
But no, he got them. I didn't want to necessarily keep it quiet. I didn't want to break his heart, is what it is. No matter how mean he was to me, I don't use that as an excuse for what I did, because there's not an excuse, you know? And I carry a lot of guilt with me about it. And I got my babies. I mean, they're the greatest things in the whole world. But
How did he find out?
he did the paternity test, and the paternity test came back. He was 99% like not the father. And he called me and he was like, "Do you want to get in front of this?" I said, "Get in front of what? What do you mean?" And about an hour later, he had posted publicly on Facebook that he was not the father of the children.
How many kids?
2.
How old were they?
5 at the time, 4 and 2. 4 and 2. And they still know him to be their only father. And he still treats them as if he's the only father.
So he's still in their lives.
Oh, yeah.
That's very nice of him.
If that's what you want to call it. I call it control, but nice is not a word that people often use for this man. And
Now we don't have his side of the story at all. But a couple of things that I picked up on when I was listening to this part was she was saying she has her babies. And I took that as, I translated that to, she had something to love her unconditionally, because she never felt it. She didn't care how she got them. She don't care who she hurt along the way of getting them, that she had her babies. And I don't know how her husband treated her. She could be telling the truth. He could be a mean whatever. But like she said, there's no excuse for what she did. But at the same time, it just seems like she does. It's hard to pick up on her mental state with me. It's like, is she remorseful, or I don't know. It just seems like it's still a kind of passive. What do y'all think? Nelson, you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways you can look at it. Like, I don't know how much time has passed since she's doing the interview to all this happening. So there could be a certain level of being just like she's gone over the mental hurdles of it and processed it fully and now can just freely talk about it. Then there's the other end to where it's like, is she actually detached from it? And, you know, still processing it in like maybe that childlike world. I mean, it was fascinating to me to hear about the husband. I mean, I'm sure most men would look at him and they probably call him a simp.
Oh yeah.
Like taking care of children that are not his and still loving them like, you know, his own. I think it's admirable. But then the way she chooses to describe it is with the kind of a juvenile term, he's mean, and that him taking care of the kids isn't a form of love, it's a form of control.
Right.
That is fascinating to me, especially given the things that she's done to harm the marriage. I'll be so curious to know how he viewed those things happening to harm the marriage and the cheating and things like that. And then how he is personally with her. Like, how does he actually interact with her? is he the person that tries to save everybody? Is that what initially attracted them, like that's kind of savior complex, or is it a form of control and then her stepping out and kind of rebelling from that control and having kids forces him to now start using that against her in terms of, look what you've done to me, and not yet I'm still here for you. There's just so many different angles you could take to it. That was just fascinating to me.
Yeah, I agree. Mr. Smith, did you have an input on that?
Yeah. A couple of things. She does not sound remorseful. And I sense, just on the way she's communicated, an attempt to make herself the victim. And I don't know whether you call it blame shifting, gaslighting, but it is something that I've seen over 30 years in family court. And that's dealing with, the teen mothers, the older mothers. I think my oldest client was like 80 years old. And it is rare that we have a mother actually be remorseful enough to apologize to the guy. And then when I hear these things about this person being mean, based on the number of proven false allegations I have seen in court, I take what is said with a grain of salt.
Okay.
I would be like, okay, how many police reports you got? Now, when you say he was mean, was that he tried to establish some boundaries for you so that you couldn't go out on the girls' night with your single friends, leave him home with the kids, and he said that you couldn't go because you're a married woman? Well, I've heard women say, well, you're trying to control me. You're being mean. That's why I take these things with a grain of salt. And well, okay, exactly what did he do to warrant being called mean? Was he trying to enforce some boundary? Or was he like Nelson was, I think he was kind of alluding to, is the guy, a Sir Galahad, a victim of white knighting? Because if he dated her for any period of time and knows anything about her family background, she's coming with issues. And are you the guy that tries to save everybody at the expense of your own self and your own mental, emotional, and financial health? And it's also a case for why I'm a staunch advocate of DNA testing at birth. See, she danced around that whole thing about, well, he kind of discovered after his lawyer read the language that my lawyer put in. Why not be an adult and make a truthful disclosure? You knew, well, she knew when she was having intimate relationships outside of her marriage. She knew that she wasn't married, and she knew that wasn't her husband. And at all times, she would either know which man was not the father or might not be the father. And to me, the adult responsible thing to do when you're doing something that's negative toward the relationship is to take ownership, and with the understanding that there will be consequences, repercussions and consequences from your actions. But I don't think she operates with a frame to see things in an adult fashion like that. But that's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna go to some of the comments in the chat. We have Successful MD says she knows how to play the role, great acting skills. And he also says she is a forever victim. And the people with such disorders are great with fake apologies. He's very busy in the chat. He says he probably said no to some ill behavior, like you were saying earlier, Mr. Smith. And JBWR said you can't be the hero all the time, be the hero. And the Successful MD again says, did she really reveal her family upbringing, or did she sell herself as a damsel in distress when dating? Good question. Let's the video was we haven't even got halfway through the video. Let's go on with the video a little bit further.
Anything he can do to not essentially let go of me and to kind of continue to control my life is what I think to be the reason. he sees him once a week, takes him every other weekend, maybe not even the whole weekend.
So it's an ugly divorce.
It was ugly. It went on for about 7 or 8 months, which I know is not long in most divorces, but I thought it was going to be a cut and dry, quick thing. I didn't think he was going to fight me on it. I thought he didn't like me this whole time, but here we are. So he did fight me on pretty much everything I asked for. The divorce ended pretty equal. Nobody got anything crazy. 50-50 with the kids until he ended up unhoused. But yeah, he's still present. He still shows up to parent-teacher conferences. He coached my son's baseball team last summer. So he's still as involved as he wants to be.
And you would prefer that was not the case, or?
Unfortunately, he doesn't like to pick, this is going to sound bad about me, but he doesn't like to pick the best women. And I do feel that one day there will come a woman who doesn't necessarily want him to raise children who aren't his. I hope that doesn't happen. But if that does happen, I will have wished he had made the move sooner.
Did you premeditate this, or just all of a sudden you found out you were pregnant by somebody you were cheating with?
Oh, no, it was definitely not premeditated, but we weren't using protection.
So it was premeditated.
I didn't say like, I'm going to have sex with this man to have a baby, but I mean, I guess there was nothing done to prevent it. And the first man that I had the affair with is now my boyfriend, the father of my first child, my son. And he was my husband's assistant manager at the time.
This gets messy.
It's very, it's very messy. So my ex-husband brought him onto the team where he was working. And my ex-husband always made his assistant managers like his best friend. So he started bringing this guy around, and I made the first move, of course. And I feel like I just sensed his kindness. I mean, still to this day, this man that I'm with is the kindest, most patient man I've ever met. So I think I felt that kindness from him, which I wasn't getting from my husband at the time. So I don't even know how it started beyond me just touching his hand when we were smoking joints. But one day he came over my house without my ex-husband there, and you know what happened next. And we only saw each other once a week to do this because of how my schedule, my ex-husband's schedule, and his schedule matched up. So every Wednesday I saw him. We had sex. He watched me get ready for work, and then he'd go work for my ex-husband. Yeah. So that's how that one started. And again, I mean, my son is just the best human ever. So I don't regret it. And I'm with him now, and he's just my absolute soulmate. And I haven't cheated on him. But the second affair, who the man is the father of my daughter, he actually worked with me this time. He was my maintenance guy at my leasing job. And again, just another kind man who was nice to me. And I would see him a lot more because we worked together. So we would take our lunches together and have sex then. And when I found out I was pregnant with my son, we were 100% sure it was my husband's, even though I was having an affair, because I don't know, I just always felt like I could sense when I got pregnant, which obviously isn't right, but I just felt it. So we were so sure. And then he came out looking like my boyfriend now. Spitting image. So there were some questions at the beginning there. But still, you have to be really sure about that to confront your wife. You got to be real sure. So he didn't. People questioned what he looked like to him, and he just said no. And then with my daughter, She's Hispanic. So she came out a little more tan than the both of us. And just as she grew up, just kept that tan skin. And still, she looks so much like me. He was just like, yep, she looks like my wife. And now she looks like her dad, which is terrifying. But again, I love her crazy ass too. But
Do you have regrets about anything you've done?
I wouldn't say regrets because I got my babies. So I definitely am not going to say that I regret it. I wish I would have gone about it differently, maybe, or maybe picked a second different baby daddy. I don't know, because I didn't even think he was gonna be my baby daddy. And here we are with 3 baby daddies and 2 kids, is what I joke about. So yeah, it's been wild.
Emotionally, what is?
I'd say, yeah.
I mean, you're putting other people through emotions that they never.
Yeah,
they
my
never saw coming.
ex-husband's family cut him off once he decided to claim the children. They didn't like that, and they threatened to sue me with fraud because of what they had bought in the children. And then, I mean, of course, I took away my ex-husband's whole life in one swift. Whoosh, house, wife, kids. So I think the craziest part is just the guilt that I always feel, like every day. And if I think about it, I cry. And I've gotten called a lot of names. And I get it, I do. But it's like I've called myself those names more than anybody else has.
You're harder on yourself than everyone else.
Absolutely. And I mean, and my mom used to say, the people who love you. Like, they're not going to judge you. And I know that. I mean, everybody who loves me has been so supportive and so amazing, but I judge me.
Was there a little bit of revenge or satisfaction in what you did?
No. I mean, my babies, I guess, would be the satisfaction, but no, I mean, it didn't even make me feel better because he was never any nicer to me. He still treated me like crap, and still, no matter how he treated me, I still feel like this about what I did to him because it sucks. I ripped his whole life away in one document.
Yeah, that would be a horrible thing to go through.
And it's like, I didn't come out unscathed. I mean, he was mean the whole process, but my life wasn't ruined. My whole life wasn't taken away from me. So I always feel worse about what I did to him than anything. That's what gets me every day.
What was the hardest part of the marriage for you?
My treatment, the way I was treated, and the fact that my dad was never very kind to my mom. And I won't use that as an excuse, but so therefore I feel like I kind of let men treat me terribly my whole life. I mean, now I'm a badass bitch and I'll rock your shit, but I let men treat me bad my whole life. I always joke that I grew up around mean men my whole life. So now.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack. Nelson, do you want to go ahead and give an input on that, what we got so far?
So this isn't going to be popular, but
Yeah.
my heart definitely breaks for her and her husband at the same time, because, I said at the beginning about the childlike behavior kind of being this like protective bubble. It kind of sounds like, but even in spite of that, you see that it's protecting her from that deep shame and guilt that she feels. Like, I can't imagine the weight of knowing that you've literally ruined someone's entire life, and people look at you different. Your kids are a constant reminder. People say things to you. People call her all types of names. I'm sure online after she did that interview and she looked in the comment section, she probably got destroyed, and everybody made comments about she knew what she did and all these different things. So imagine a person that feels like they're alone seeing all of that, dealing with all of that, and to a certain extent, you say, okay, you brought this upon yourself. Yes, that is true. It's a yes and type of thing. Yes, and you grew up in a highly dysfunctional household. One of the first things she said was that I don't think my dad paid very much attention to me. She said that in the beginning. And then everything she talked about with her relationships going forward had to do with men being kind to her. So you see elements that are missing inside of, you see these elements missing inside of a relationship. Um, it's, it's just, it's heartbreaking. A lot of times when we deal with people with, a lot of people don't know that personality disorders, and I'm not saying that she has one or anything like that, but coming from dysfunctional families is one of the main causes of people developing personality disorders. And so, you look at dysfunction of a drug dealing household. We don't, she said both, she alluded to like both parents being either both or one or both parents being on drugs. So we don't know what the emotional roller coasters that she's been on with them and what she's experienced, or any abuse or anything like that she's experienced. But developing, you can develop into, that's where narcissists are born. I'm not saying that she is or that she's even displaying anything like that, but that can also lead her to get with a narcissist, because you're going to look for a person that symbolizes what you needed the most at that time, which might be safety. And you think about narcissists, who do they tend to go for? Nice women that that seem to need protection.
Yeah, right.
So there's so many layers to her story, but I would just caution everyone to try to keep, even though you hate what she's saying and the things that she's done, definitely put yourself into her shoes when she starts talking about the emotions of dealing with the weight of what she's done. Like, what would that feel like for you? Just to try to keep a balance to how you're perceiving her.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Mr. Smith?
Yeah. Yeah, I got to admit, she does have a tough background, which is definitely going to have an ongoing impact on her life, her decisions. I think she would probably be a good candidate even right now. If she hasn't already done the work with a therapist that she can vibe with and connect with, and someone's not just going to, just poo-poo her, but help her with learning accountability, learning how to make critical, how to go down the path of critical thinking skills, the whole thing, the concept of actions, consequences, responsibility, accountability. But I also got to take a look at something she said that I think needs to be corrected. She does not have 3 baby daddies. She has 2 baby daddies and one stepfather for her kids. And he did not get the opportunity to make the decision about staying in a relationship with her like he could have with DNA testing at birth.
Exactly.
I'm a staunch advocate that with DNA testing at birth, or better yet, how about now? Since my lab partner developed and released probably one of the only legal prenatal DNA paternity tests, that starting at the 7th week into pregnancy, you can determine who's the biological father, and assumably if she's the biological mother as opposed to being a surrogate, you can get that clear answer in the 7th, 8th week of the pregnancy. And that way a husband who's got an unfaithful wife who has, my experience says she's had more than 2 affairs. She's only claiming the 2 that she had babies by. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm saying I got a 30-year experience here dealing with family court, being a international DNA service provider. And I can't tell you how many times the mothers will say, that's the only person it could be. And 4 people later, we find the dad.
Mhm.
Now, yes, there's room for some compassion here, but having had a client, had a man when his ex-wife did this same thing to him, and she literally tried to destroy him using the family court to use the no-fault divorce mechanism to take all of his assets, sue him for child support, alimony, take his house. He actually deleted himself
Oh, wow.
over this, and he's the reason that I still continue to advocate for men and boys, because the societal view is that there's a great deal of sympathy for women and girls. I mean, for women and girls, regardless. Listen, regardless of her own personal responsibility in causing this situation, she'll be the first one that if she plays that victim card, she will get all kind of sympathy, even in the courtroom. I am pleased to hear she didn't pursue child support, and they're, at least from a financial perspective, they parted ways. But it's going to be real tough for this husband to get back into a relationship. But should he want to have his own kids, it is not uncommon that men who are able want to have their own legacy by producing children that are actually his. And she
Mhm.
took away his choice. And that was, she knowingly and willingly hid that information from him. And she can't convince me otherwise, because she's the party who knew that she was having relations with the husband's employee. And then the other subsequent Hispanic gentleman. Now, I don't let those things slide. And I think the way the laws work across the nation, men and boys absolutely must verify all claims of paternity. And that prenatal test at 7 weeks, that sure beats finding out when the kids are 5 or 6.
Right. I agree. Um, that's interesting. You say that too. I have another story I want to. I'm going to loop you in on. I was holding off on it, but it's a very deep story. I think me and Mr. Nelson talked about it before. Another actual case going on right now that I've been sitting in on. I'll I'll loop you in on it as well. But BJ, the hitman isn't that Cornell Smith, the coach who beat his paternity case in Georgia? I think, right?
Yes, it is. Even after taking the case to the U.S. Supreme Court, showing them at the time we could prove there were over 1.2 million men and boys back in 2000, I think 2002, while my case was going up before the U.S. Supreme Court. They
Mhm.
had 2 meetings over it. They forced me to spend extra money. By the way, I co-wrote that law in Georgia, so I knew what was in it. And after the Supreme Court turned me down, I went back to court using that law that I helped to write. I'm the first person to win his case using that law.
That's amazing.
I am no longer trapped by law.
No longer trapped by law. And he has a book you got. I did put the link in the chat called Trapped by Law. Going to help you navigate through the system to get you started at least on the hear about his journey and what he had to do to get to win his case. And also you have his link to his other ways to contact him as well. If, for because you do consultations. Is that correct?
I do. I
You do
do.
consultations. So if you need his assistance, there's his link to
Well, the best way is just go to thepaternitycoach.com.
thepaternitycoach.com. Okay.
Yes, yes, because the sites are moving. They're going to be all moved to the paternitycoach.com domain. And
Okay.
if you try to stay trying to keep up with the link tree, well,
It's coming
you'll
around.
miss me.
Okay. I'll be sure to update that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad they heard about it. Um, I continue to be an advocate, because one of the things I found, um, and by the way, you can find me on all social media. You can find me on X, YouTube, Facebook. I got pages on all of them, and I add news stories even now. But people are surprised at the number of married men who are victims of paternity fraud. I've met 5 pastors who are victims of paternity fraud by their ex-wives, who was the first lady of the church.
Lady.
So nobody is 100% safe when you have a person in your relationship who either has no boundaries or is willing to ignore the boundaries and just say, I see what I want. I'm going to get what I want, and consequences be darned.
Yeah, this is something else. But also, guys, be sure to go over and subscribe to Mr. Nelson's channel, Mr. Gary Nelson, the licensed therapist. His channel is called Drama Therapy Hub. He has some new content coming up soon. But there's content already over there as well right now for you to enjoy. We're gonna go ahead and finish this video. I don't think we have a few more minutes left in it. And we're gonna get our final thoughts and our thoughts from the chat. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat and take a few calls as well if anybody wants to come up. And then we'll conclude our show for tonight in just a moment.
I know how to handle them.
What's the hardest part of the marriage for you?
My treatment, the way I was treated, and the fact that my dad was never very kind to my mom. And I won't use that as an excuse, but so therefore I feel like I kind of let men treat me terribly my whole life. I mean, now I'm a badass bitch and I'll rock your shit, but I let men treat me bad my whole life. I always joke that I grew up around mean men my whole life, so now I know how to handle them. And what the final straw was for me with my ex was he physically assaulted me in front of the children. And my son had to use a plastic sword to like hit his dad and get him off me. And my son's 5 now. This was a year and a half, 2 years ago. And he still brings it up. He still talks to me about it. So I think the hardest part was the treatment and allowing my children to see the way I was treated, because they hadn't watched me get good love the first 4 or 5 years of their life. So that was the hardest part, because I don't want my daughter to do what I did. You know, I want both my kids to be treated respectfully and kindly, and they see that now. But
your relationship with your father was
tumultuous.
Tumultuous?
Yeah. I was a daddy's girl until I could form my own opinions, I say. Once everything daddy said wasn't right and wasn't true, that's kind of when I don't want to say didn't care. He just stopped being so present in my life. And he would make comments about my weight, and I got an eating just he wasn't a nice man. And I know that's where I get wanting kindness so bad. He was never a nice man. But now he's older. I mean, and I gave him the boy he always wanted, so he's kinder. But I still can't cry in front of him. Tears are a big trigger for him. And now tears are a trigger for me when my kids cry, even though I cry every day. When my kids cry, I lose it. I just can't handle listening to someone cry. Even myself. But like I said, now we're good. I mean, I see him 3-4 times a year. He loves my kids to death. And my stepmom's great. I didn't like her my whole life, but now that I'm older, I can see that she was just doing what was best for everyone involved. My dad, mainly. He's a better person because of her, for sure.
What are you proudest of in your life?
Surviving. Just being able to wake up this morning and come here, I had a couple suicide attempts, just because life is wild. And when you're a drug addict, sometimes that's all you can see as an escape. But I survived it. So obviously I'm supposed to be here or whatever. And now I know it's because I was put on this earth to be a mom to my children. But you never know what your purpose is until you get there, and then you're still unsure, you know? So I say I'm alive for my kids because they're the best people I've ever met.
Are the children confused about who their fathers are?
No, because they've only known him. They've only known my ex as their father.
No, but the son who is actually your boyfriend is the actual father, but your ex-husband is his original father.
Yes.
That's confusing for him, right?
I feel like children are smarter than we think they are. So I believe that my son can just almost feel it. You know, they look identical. They're twins, body build, face, hair, everything. Just the same person in different bodies. And I know he's going to start asking questions probably here soon because he knows they look alike. And, you know, Austin's so amazing to him and just so kind and patient, even with my crazy daughter. So I feel like he feels something. You know, he knows what good love looks like. And I do believe he'll start asking questions. And a part of me thinks he'll be relieved to find out. But no child will even find out until my ex and I both decide that it's time.
So your son is older than your daughter?
He is. He's 5.
So you had the relationship with your boyfriend, and then you
Yeah.
had another relationship.
I did. So I had a relationship with my boyfriend about 6 years ago. And then once I got pregnant, we actually kind of stopped communicating. He moved away. And then I had the baby. And he brought his girlfriend to my house to meet unknowingly our child, me and my ex-husband. And I wasn't super kind to her because I think maybe I knew, and I didn't like the guy that I had loved at one point bringing another woman in my house, even though I was living with another man. So he did meet Coda right when he was born. And then he kind of disappeared again when he was still living out of town. And he was still following me on social medias, which I didn't know. And my ex was like, you know, he's still looking at my stories. And I'm like, if he's looking at your stories, he's looking at my stories. And so that's how I reconnected with him once the divorce happened, was I just reached out to him on social media.
You're trouble.
I'm not anymore. I used to be.
What's changed?
I'm madly in love with him. And he's kind and patient and everything I could have ever imagined the father of my children to be. And he's one of those guys that when you get him, you can't let him go because someone else will get him and then you're going to be mad. He's just the greatest human, just amazing. So, I mean, I kind of knew up until him and I got back together that he was always my soulmate. And he is. I do believe that to this day. And here he is, just in my life again. So I'm happy and I'm not trouble anymore. I'm good to him for the most part.
You sure?
Yes, I'm positive. I do. I can't mess this one up. My ex-husband sucked, but this one's a good one. So I won't mess this one up.
After going through all of this, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in all of this?
To find the right one for you. If you stay 10 years in a marriage that isn't the right one, then you're just going to live miserably your whole life or end up doing what I did. And I feel like if you're truly happy and if they treat you how you deserve to be treated and, you know, you treat them the same, I feel like that's the biggest thing is just finding the right one. And I was very young and newly clean when I had met my ex-husband. So I was in a very vulnerable state. And so now being clean, I was clean 5 months when I met him. Now being clean 12 years and building up my backbone again and being the person I was always supposed to be, really opened up the doors for me to finally be able to be in a healthy relationship. And this is the healthiest one I've ever been in. It's weird. It feels funny, but we're doing it.
I hope it lasts
I do too.
for the kids' sake.
I do too.
All right, Kira, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Mark, thanks for having me.
I wish you guys lots of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, that to me that was pretty deep. And to have had all of her children, well, she only had two outside of the marriage, so her and her husband didn't even have any children. So I feel like he probably would feel he's not here to defend himself. And I haven't heard his side of the story, but I think he probably would. Had a video pop up in the background. I think he probably would feel cheated that he didn't get any children out of the marriage, but the children that were mothered by his wife were two other men. So we're gonna I think I'm probably nobody wanting to come up. If you're still in the chat, you can hit the link is in the chat. Or if anybody want to come up and give their input on the video we just made or just watched or the situation in general, please feel free to jump up on the link. Is in the chat. Mr. Nelson, were you going to say something?
Yeah, you see so many, all of this is just everybody, people that are victims. You know what I mean? Like, she's a victim of her upbringing that turned her that gave her some of the very wrong, deep, dark coping mechanisms that she used. And then still having knowledge of all the wrong that she's done and that level of remorse to go as far as wanting to self-delete, that is powerful. Like and then the ex-husband, raising children that to be yours and then finding out that they are not. That is, I don't know of any deeper pain a person can experience. I mean, you just see so many people that have been affected through generations, just through their parents, because I'm sure whatever was inside of the ex-husband that was causing him to engage in like domestic violence, something that came from his youth, something from his upbringing, it always draws out. We always seek for the thing that we needed the most when we were growing up. So with her, she was searching for love, particularly from a man. And a lot of her decisions that came from that search, even though she was searching for it, she didn't know what it particularly looked like. So she's ending up finding things that are the wrong things that might have mirrored what she saw in her father growing up, mistaking those things for love and attaching them to another person. So you just see her story play out as this person searching for love. There's another woman that I've known about. She wasn't a client or anything, but she lost a mother at an early age, and drugs were involved with that as well. And because of how she was raised and the lack of things that were inside of her life,
Structure,
the lack of structure, lack of accountability, lack of responsibility, she became a person that started seeking validation from others. So rather than seeking love from a man, she seeks validation from everybody. She seeks praise from everybody telling her that she's doing the right thing. And she's off attacking other women that she believes are bad women based on how she was raised and the messed up stuff she saw about her own mother. She's attacking other women that she believes are evil or wrong and ruining their lives, causing issues in their lives, while at the same time seeking praise from everybody as if she's some type of hero. So you see how these stories can play out in different ways for so many different people.
Right. Thank you for that. Be sure to go over, guys, and subscribe to Drama Therapy Hub. He has content on his channel, already on their channel right now. That's very interesting. and he will be uploading some new content soon as well. All right, Mr. Smith.
Yeah. Couple of takeaways. She's had it tough there for sure. Um, with that background, I believe she used probably used drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism, and the
Mhm.
lack of having a healthy father-daughter relationship with an involved active dad.
Right.
Um, I think that that could lead her or influence her seeking attention and validation in an unhealthy and a non, what's the way I would, I'm trying not to execute a value judgment on her, but
Mm.
she's a victim of her past and her upbringing. But at some point, once you become an adult, you got to choose, do you want to stay that way? And if you don't like the outcomes that you are continuing to get in your life, I believe at some point it becomes, I can no longer say about what my past was 30, 40 years ago. Am I influenced by it? Yes. Am I affected by it? Yes. But now, am I going to make a conscious decision that I need help to get toward a path of healing so that I don't keep repeating those type of decisions? Because she has few to little boundaries in terms of
Mhm.
relationship with men. And, it just my observation. It seems like she seeks attention and validation. Says she pursued that guy. So to me, that would mean she has few, if any, boundaries. I mean, that's bad as a person saying, "The Lord is my shepherd. I see what I want. I'm gonna go get it."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Right.
and to some people, uh, even though they're in a committed relationship, whether it be boyfriend, girlfriend, married or not, they see someone else that they want. They see it as a challenge. I will not be denied. I see what I want and I can get what I want. Now, I
Mhm.
don't agree with her on keeping the children in ignorance and the dark about their ancestry and who their fathers are. It
Mhm.
can be, it can be, it can be informed and shared with the children in an age appropriate way with a licensed therapist, and it be done in a family setting in such a way that they get some ongoing support, because the children need to know, in my opinion, where did they come from, who are they related to, because I've come across cases where kids got in relationships with a sibling,
Mhm.
because when you don't know who your father is, you won't know who your sisters and brothers are.
Yeah.
And this one couple that one, when the results came back, they were full brother and sister.
Wow.
They found out after they had a baby,
Oh my.
and nobody told them. The mother was too ashamed because she didn't want to let it be known that she had been
Fair.
tipping around on her husband. So the kids from one family and her son or daughter in the house, they end up getting a relationship. They stay together all the way through high school, and they end up living together.
Oh my.
So in the old days, like with my parents' generation, if you were dating somebody, one of the first things they want to know is
Who your
who
people?
who is her people.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can't date that girl. You can't date that girl called that's your first cousin.
Right.
That's your second cousin. Sometimes everybody doesn't come to the family reunion.
Yes. Yeah. We don't have them anymore though. I seem like,
Well, in my family, we're documented back about, I think about 12, 14 generations. And every 2 years, the family gets together and we make it changes for those who have passed on, and then for the new births, and keep up with, who's who. Like I
Mhm.
said, a side benefit of this is so you don't end up in a relationship, in an inappropriate relationship, because I think it also helps for those who want to be in a meaningful, constructive relationship going forward, something long term. It might be worth your time to do some vetting on the front end. If you got a person who is dependent on drugs, alcohol, has low boundaries and participates in some destructive behavior, it is not your job to save this person. I mean, if you're a licensed therapist and stuff, you probably shouldn't be in that relationship either, right? Intimate relationship and be their therapist, right? I'm if you've seen some of my posts, I talk about how men need to learn how to become focused on saving himself. And that means if you're going to be in a long-term relationship, you got to be willing to spend some time in a relationship and vetting those people, and for them to vet you. Compatibility is not because you get the tingles when he speaks, or she gets the tingles when that one speaks, or someone tells you, oh, y'all look cute together. We put up a post of y'all going out to dinner, and y'all look like y'all would make a fabulous couple.
Right.
But sometimes after some short-term events, people find out that's all that was there.
Just look good.
Short-term. And as far as, I know in my past, I had relationships that I found out I didn't like her. And someone else would say to me, but dude, this person is gorgeous.
Everybody want her, huh?
Cute, fine. But I had conversations with her that left me puzzled as for why was I there? And I actually had a conversation with a young lady once, and I told her, I says, you remind me of a house with all the lights on and ain't nobody home. And she said, well, what you mean? We broke up. And I know I'm not everybody. I wasn't everybody else's cup of tea back then either. But so is the vetting process should go both ways, right?
Right.
Deciding what do you want? You want short term, you want long term. You want short term, then you can't be upset when somebody says, okay, ghost. But if you want long term, y'all need to make sure that y'all on the same page, and you need to learn some things about each other's families, each other's past. What are your deal breakers? What do you think is a healthy boundary? I mean, if I'm the guy in your relationship with you and I still want to hang out with the single fellas, and I'm going to the strip club, and I'm making it rain, and I'm sampling the goods before I get out of the club, if you're looking for a dedicated, committed man, that would be a problem for that woman. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a paternity coach.
It makes sense to me. Yeah. But remember, I think I may have mentioned in one of our old interview about I walked the high school halls with a nephew and a sister and didn't know it. So it's a very good chance I could have. They're right there. Yeah, didn't even know it. Before I graduated, though, it was confirmed who my father was. But
that is awesome.
I always had an idea, and like back in the day, everybody they know who everybody's daddy is, but you. But
yeah,
they were telling me anything, So I know I can only imagine the trauma of meeting someone and falling in love and getting married, having a baby, even. Later find out that they're your cousin or some kind of close relative. Like that was my nephew.
Yeah.
That would have been, I'm glad it wouldn't go that far, but he was.
But that's the risk.
Was in the same
high
high
school.
That's the risk. Absolutely. We have Private Nobody up on the panel. He wants to share the legal aspect in the paternity fraud. Private Nobody, how are you?
Greetings, everyone. How are you, Gail?
A little loud. I'm fine. How are you?
You say I'm a little loud?
A little loud, yes.
Okay, let me turn down the gain. Yes, I remember when Paternity Coach was on the last time, and we had spoke in the background, and I had brought to your attention that there's various ways you can address this issue. And as you know, I operate from the private side. As paternity coach may know, because he shows a proficiency in law, and congratulations on all your wins. I know personally what it takes. I've been involved with the legal profession for 38 years. I am not an attorney, although I teach attorneys. And one of the things I teach them is the private side of life in the law. When I say law, it's as opposed to legal. Legal is for public commerce. Law and lawful is for living souls, men and women. There's a big difference between the two. We don't have time to go into that right now. But I wanted to share an approach that I use with men in family court. And it's essentially 100% successful. And here's why. Like I just spoke of the public and private. When we enact the private side as men and women, as opposed to what's going on in these commercial courts. In the commercial courts, they deal with what is called legal fictions. When you're in court, in actuality, it's not about you unless you're in joinder, what they call legal joinder, with the birth certificate estate. That is what the court is looking at. But if you're in legal joinder with it, and this is the bad part for men, they're considered the surety or the trustee of that estate, accepting the liability. And once you are accepting the liability, they have jurisdiction over your body by your consent. The system doesn't work unless you consent. 100%. The consent was first given by your mother. She didn't know what she was doing when she signed those papers. And that put you into joinder. But once you became the age of majority, you had an opportunity to correct the mistakes by your mother. And most people fail to do so because they don't even know about it. Not even a lot of lawyers. That's where I teach the lawyers, the private side. And they tell me, oh, they never taught this in school. Of course not. The system is not designed for you to have your lawful rights. You have what they call privileges. And privileges can be taken away at any moment. So what happens is when I say we, because I currently teach this and help people just like yourself, coach, help people in these positions. What we do is break the joinder from the body to the estate. Like I have a phrase, status correction of the record, be ye separate from the birth certificate estate. Once that is done, it's of record, it's published, then you can serve your notice to the court that the court no longer has jurisdiction over the body. And there's nothing they can do about it. Because you always have the right to reverse consent. Because generally speaking, in order for a contract or agreement or trust to be invoked or reversed requires two parties. Well, in these unilateral agreements, there's only one party that signed. So therefore, you can withdraw your consent, and being that there's nobody on the other side, they can't object. It works every time. Simply withdrawing jurisdiction from the court over the body. They have jurisdiction over the estate because they created it. So if they create it, they have control over it. This system was set up after what happened in 1933, when the system went from lawful money to legal tender. And that affected public law, and it went to public policy. All of that dealt with fictions. See, this was all set up starting in the late 1800s in England when they did the birth certificate registrations. Then they brought it over here because they were setting up shop. They knew what was going to happen and how they would change the system. 1933 and 1934 were pivotal years in this world, not just here in the United States, but the world. And when they went to legal tender, although you still had countries that still use lawful money. Oh, and by the way, we still have lawful money, but most of it is on the private side. Remember I said it's a public side and the private side. 98% of our lives deals with the public. Most people are unaware of the private, except for your millionaires and billionaires. They know. And as a result, it literally shifted the statuses of the people, especially like in this country, Canada, Australia, UK, from literal free people to slaves. We're living on a slave plantation. And you have few people that know the system to extract themselves out of the system. That's what I advocate. And as a result of those, especially that are of the kingdom of heaven, it is our job to be ye separate from the world as much as possible. And that's my focus. But it works with the general public also. And like I said, once you make that separation, the courts have no jurisdiction over your body. You're operating the estate just like a CEO with a corporation. You become an agent, a name holder, attorney in fact, a beneficiary, whatever hat you need to wear to operate that estate. And this is a matter of public record too. And it's good in all 50 states. So you have to get a little knowledge behind it, but once you understand it, it is extremely simple. It is extremely simple. And by the way, Coach, I used to do things your way. Be up 24 hours almost. There's cases that I went 48 hours to make sure everything was right and got into court. I don't do that no more. It's much more simple. But the only thing is, once you get into that realm, the job is to stay there because the system is booby-trapped to bring you back into the plantation. Everywhere you go, the system is set up that way. And that's the part, the educational part that I give to show people what's actually going on and how to stay on track. Because you can invalidate all that you set up by recontracting with the system. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to share. I didn't want to go too deep because time is getting away from us, but there is another way to do it. Coach's way works. My way works also.
That's interesting. We have to do maybe a pre-recorded about that to get more in depth with where you were going with it, to get a better understanding of it. I appreciate that.
And shout out to Mr. Nobody.
Private
And
Nobody.
shout out to you, Private Nobody, for understanding that there's those that know their options, and there are those that don't know their options. Because I believe correct. you can't effectively advocate for yourself without knowing what are your rights, what is the law, and then how to use it. Shame we don't even talk about these type of topics in high school and stuff like that. I mean,
no, they keep that away from you.
Mhm.
Just like
You
the money
you got to go to
system.
law school to get a JD just to find out there are some attorneys who themselves lose their cases in family court.
Yeah.
Their own cases, yeah.
It- yeah, it's a rigged system, especially family court. Because I've worked in criminal, family, business. Did a little bit of divorces, but I got out of that because it was too sticky. Same thing with family court. You know, when I was doing it your way, it was a mess. You know, the fighting between the parties, you know, the fighting between the attorneys. Now, I didn't actually advocate in court, but I went with the people to court as a friend of the court, and then I was allowed to speak. Now, in other cases, when I dealt with real estate and other business, I would get interest in the matter, and then I could speak. Because remember, I'm a non-attorney, and and I created my own docs and everything to get it done, and the judges approved. And so I was able to speak with, not on behalf of, but with the client.
All
And
right.
so
There's more than one way to get in there.
exactly. Yeah, there's various ways to get in there.
Yeah. Expert witness is also another option.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we sound like we shop in the same store, or at least some size of that store.
Well, when you first came up, that's why, and I heard you speak, and I saw that you spoke with knowledge and you knew procedure, and that's the key, procedure. You can know all the law in the world, but if you do not go by the rules of the court,
absolutely,
they will knock you out, because what they call at law, it's form over substance.
Yep.
And equity, which a family court is a court of equity.
Yeah, it is not a court of law.
But they run it like law, but not equity.
Yes.
So
yes.
They run it like it's a statutory court. Now, yes, they do have statutory parameters, but the decisions are supposed to be made by the judge under equity, under the maxims of equity, and they don't do it for the most part.
Well, then you're going to appreciate why I was adamant to do some things in writing the statutes for paternity fraud, was to eliminate judicial discretion. Because prior to that, you could actually have cases where married single men and teenage boys had a DNA test showing 0%. Not their kid. That's a pregnancy he did not commit. And they could order him to pay anyway because he had already been paying. And they would say, using the term locus parentis, you've been acting in place of a parent. Well, now that you know it's not your kid and you don't want to pay or go to jail, well, since you've been paying, we're just going to leave this alone and we're going to ignore your illegal DNA test. And I found that to be absurd.
Now get this. Now, remember how I preface the differences between the systems. When you're on the plantation, the judge is like the master or the overseer. You don't have the right to speak back to the judge with regards to how he is going to apply the law or equity.
Unless you have statute that can limit his authority.
Exactly. Yeah, because he's bound by the rules of the court and statutory precedents.
Exactly.
And so when they do that, that's where my approach knocks the judge out the box. Because right now, once you put that notice in, that there's a separation between the estate and the body, the court lost. And any liability that's there goes to the entity that created the estate, which is the state of whatever state it is. They're responsible. Remember the maxim: creators are responsible for the liability of their creations.
Well,
that's
Mr.
why
Nobody, you sound like you should have your own show.
Well, I operate from the private. I I teach and I'm on a lot of platforms where
Okay.
I share my knowledge,
Mhm.
but I try not to get too much on the public side, because once you enter the public realm too much, that's contracting back in.
You've heard of this term UPL, right?
Yes,
Yeah, they've tried that to silence me on more than one occasion. So,
I beat every last one of them.
so have I.
Right.
I
Now,
beat
just
every last.
for the audience, me and Private Nobody are talking about what is the term called unauthorized
Practice of law.
You
Yep.
cannot hold yourself out to be a licensed practicing attorney unless you have actually obtained that and you got a bar card.
But
Okay.
attorneys tell me you got more power in the court than I do, because I'm not restricted to their laws and rules and regulations.
Not
Because
as
I
much as
didn't.
that attorney is.
Yeah, because he's bound.
Sometimes they'll favor the court over their own client.
Okay, there's a not a maxim, but there's a rule dealing with that, because the attorney has an obligation to the court and the state.
Yeah, that sounds like a conflict of interest when I'm the one paying them.
Yes, over their client's interests. If there's a conflict between the two, the client loses.
Yeah.
That's written.
Yeah.
That's written.
Yeah, that solidified why I wanted to make sure I had statutory law. I had the benefit of getting some feedback from an appellate court, actually a chief appellate court judge, a brother who I met at an event for Black attorneys and judges, and he happened to have seen my story on the front page of the Atlanta, Georgia, Fulton County legal newspaper while my case was still before the Supreme Court. What he didn't know was that I had gotten it there pro se on my own, did the research. I met all of the proper forms, because you explained it to the audience here. You know, you could literally lose your case because you didn't use the right font, you didn't use the right spacing, and your case just get thrown out the door. You have merit, but you didn't meet the rules of the court.
And if you don't meet the rules of the court, they do not address the merits of your issues. Point blank.
Yeah, and that's where we said, there are those who know, and there are those who don't know. Got nothing to do with rich or poor and black or white, in my humble opinion, that you can learn to be an effective pro se, pro per litigant, which means self-representing, but you got to spend the time, effort, and you got to be disciplined to do it. In my case, I was facing a prison sentence because after the truth was out, the woman sued me to make me pay her anyway. And I just wouldn't agree. By the way, and some people, like they say this as guys who they don't want the man to have a choice. The man who has had a relationship with the kid, he has a choice. He can, if allowed, he can continue to be a part of the child's life, but he may be like me, would not have been willing to pay 40% of his net income to the child's mother, which was above my house payment. I could either pay my house payment or pay her. Once I found out the kid's not mine, I'm keeping the house where my wife and my newborn were. But I asked, well, look, can my family continue to see the child? And we're willing to spend money on her as long as it is done while she's in our custody. We'll do things for her. The child's mother says no, and you should still pay under the court order, and you must pay for supervised visitation, even though at that time for 11 years, no one had a problem with me. The teachers at the school said, man, we'd like to have dads like you here. But not about me. I'm just saying, like Private Nobody, there's a dark side to this thing. When you are walking through this maze, man, there are bombs. You walking through a literally a maze that's got bombs in the field. You could lose your case just on what you don't know. And I've watched people not prepare their briefs in advance of going to court. They think all they got to do is walk in and hold their hand up and say, "Excuse me, Your Honor, let me explain to you what had happened." Now, that is not how. I was like, oh man, you finna get mowed down.
First of all, courts are about records.
Absolutely.
Not so much what comes out. Yeah, not what comes out of your mouth.
Emotion.
And even then, what comes out of your mouth is reduced to a record, especially if it's transcribed. So if you go to the appellate court, all they're dealing with is records. They're not listening to you. And so I teach people over the years, reduce it to writing.
Yeah.
Don't accept phone calls. Tell them to mail or email, whatever they want to say. You always want to record. If you're a litigant, it's your responsibility to bring your record to the fullest extent in the event that you have to appeal. And I also tell people, prepare as if you're going to appeal. And
Yes.
I found out that a lot of times when judges see that, you get what you want.
Yeah.
Because
Like
they don't
hiring
want to
your
be
own
reviewed.
private court reporter.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, that's a great one.
A good one.
Big time.
Look, ask me how I know. Ask me how I know.
You know, based on what I went through.
Right.
They will
Exactly.
change that record up in
Yeah.
a heartbeat. Now, this
And
is what I tell
things
people.
will be missing in the record. You like,
Yes.
hold on now. I got the tape.
Okay, great, you got the tape, but back in the day, you wasn't able to get the tape so easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I tell people to do is right after the hearing,
Mm-hmm.
immediately reduce the events chronologically in order in the affidavit form, and then serve it on everybody. There was a lady I was working with. This was a foreclosure case. And I told her to do that. And this woman literally had like a photogenic memory.
Oh, that's a rare find.
Yes. So when I said, man, this reads like a transcript. So when I put it together, I put it together like a transcript. And when we served that motion with that affidavit, the judge hurried up and dismissed that case because it was too much specificity. And whenever you have specificity, that's 1 point in your favor when you're getting reviewed. That judge knew that. He dismissed that case, with prejudice, meaning the other side could
Can't
not
bring
come
it up.
back.
Cannot bring it up ever again.
Exactly.
Well,
So
sir,
that transcript, that transcript is a big thing.
Yeah.
you are definitely in the pro se pro per store, sir. And I sound to me like you got the badge, the trophy, and the t-shirt.
And a tattoo.
Yeah. Although I don't use the term pro per or in persona, I don't use those terms.
Okay.
Because that puts you back into the fiction world
Oh,
where you're enjoinder with the estate.
okay.
Yes. So I go in as a man that's an agent on behalf of the principal, and that principal is the birth certificate estate.
No.
Because that's what's at issue in all our commercial doings, that birth certificate estate, and everything comes off of that. Social Security, your banking, driver's license, and the like, schooling, all comes off of that birth certificate estate, which, by the way, has value
Okay.
in the millions. But
Well, thank you for sharing that, sir.
because this is one of my favorite sayings in my classes. In commercial commerce, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the estate. Because that name that the judge has on the records or in the docket, that's not your name. Your name is not in all capital letters. Those are two different entities. The estate and you as a living man or living woman. Two distinct. So when we do that separation, it's proven. And no court has been able to break through. Once you're separated from the estate, the judge no longer has jurisdiction over the body, unless you recontract in. It's very, very simple once you break it down. Saved me a whole lot of work since 2019 when I put it into effect. And I actually learned a lot from a guy in Georgia. He was putting on potent information. Back then, they took down his YouTube channel. This is before they were doing all this striking and all of this and taking your channel. This was way before then. He was helping a lot of men in family court with this approach, which I embellished so that I can use it across the board, not just in family court. I use it with the Department of State, with the passport, with the banks, everything. The estate is your monopoly piece in the realm of commerce. Just like an LLC, a trust, a corporation, and how the officers operate the corporation, you operate the estate. But they never told us. They didn't even tell us that when we do business, that it's supposed to be registered in all 50 states. And this is why the application of law is sporadic. Because when we go in there, being in joinder, without the estate being registered, you have no standing. That means they can give you a bone whenever they want to. And when they deny you, you really had no standing in the first instance to even be there. Like you said, there's a dark side, and there's a very dark side. And some of the attorneys don't even know because they were not trained to know. They'll get some smart ones. Some attorneys are picked when they're in law school to determine where they will go into the system. Everybody doesn't get the same training once they're picked. Yeah, so as I've learned, as I'm getting older, I'm over in my 60s now, just about everything they taught us, it's a lie. The further and further I go down the rabbit hole, because I'm a history buff, I'm into the Bible, I'm into the law, and the more and more I get into it, they lie to us all over the place. The fathers of lies, this is how he is the small g God of this world. It's through lies and deception, through influence.
Mm-hmm.
He has deceived the nations. And so once it's uncovered and revealed to whoever needs to know, they cannot gainsay or deny. Because I put it back on them. I put it in the form of a self-executing agreement. These are my facts and my claims. You fail to deny it, it becomes an established legal fact.
All right, that was very good, Mr. Private Nobody. We're going to have to do a show together or pre-recorded on the law and how to maneuver in the court system. A lot of these things, like you said, we're unaware of.
Well, I was basically speaking to Coach because he knows that you don't get this overnight. You got to spend time with the books. And this is what a lot of people don't want to do. And if they don't want to invest that time and effort, don't even consider going out there and wrong. You go see Paternity Coach and he'll help you out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're going to get ready to close it down for the night. And did anyone have any closing thoughts? Nelson, did you have any closing remarks regarding the show tonight?
This was a great show. It was super informative for me. I love the bringing the legal aspects of this into view. I'm just now learning some things about law and like how judges operate and prosecutors and yeah, it's disheartening sometimes because you can see it just takes one wrong person in one wrong seat of power, and your entire life could get flipped upside down. So no, this is a great stream. I'll definitely tune into the next one that you do that has to do with going deeper into the legal aspects.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, Mr. Smith, you have any closing remarks for us?
Yes, yes, yes. Pleasure to be on with Gail at night and meeting my dear
Always.
brother Nelson. Uh, Definitely learned something on the perspective there from the licensed therapist perspective there. I'll say great stream. I hope the audience at first shout out to all of you for being engaging in the comments and coming up on to join us here. A couple of key takeaways, in my opinion. It is very hard to trick or deceive someone who's aware. And this unfaithful wife, she's exposed some of the less than popular sides of family law, because there are states that say that a married woman who has any children while she's still married to her husband, they are automatically his by this thing they call the marital presumption of paternity. And that is still used in a lot of states.
Yeah.
And your
Well-
DNA test won't get you out of that trap unless there is a law similar to what I lobbied for. So this
Okay.
is an opportunity to learn how to maneuver your way, how to help keep sons, friends, cousins. Look, to avoid a trap, you must be aware that traps exist. And then how do you get out once you get in?
That's right. Mr. Nopal, you had something to say real quick?
Yeah, I'll close it with that. What Coach had stated is so huge in the legal arena. Presumptions and also assumptions. The whole system is based off of that. There are assumptions and presumptions that are already in place. And if you don't object or take the proper course of action to undo it, you're going to be stuck with it.
All right.
And so you need to know the presumptions that are known, that are published, but you also got to know about those that are unknown. That is a huge area. Anybody that's going to go down that road to learn, keep that in mind all the time. Assumptions and presumptions. And with that, with regards to his area of expertise, one way to break the presumption is object, but moreover, to redact or take back your signatures. See, this is something that most attorneys do not let the client know about. You can undo a contract, especially if you know that there's fraud, and fraud eviscerates any contract.
Okay.
And when you signed that birth certificate, that was a contract with the state. You can undo that because when you signed, you were the only party. The state never signs. That's why they call it a unilateral agreement.
Okay.
When two people sign, that's a bilateral agreement. So you can undo that. You can withdraw your signature because once you withdraw your signature, the document no longer has force or effect. So this is something that you can add to your arsenal, Coach. So not only they object, but also take back the signature, and then you put the onus on them. You'll conditionally accept upon proof of claim that he is still responsible and they can't answer.
Yeah, I get what you're talking about. That's the right of rescission.
That's the word I was looking for. Yes, right of rescission. Thank you. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Simple too. Very simple.
Yeah. That's what happened when you shop in the same store.
So when you can show fraud You have a right to rescind and then put the onus back on them if they want to try to put it back. And they can't. Because number one, the entity cannot speak. The entity cannot act. The entity is beholden to their representatives and officers and agents who generally do not have personal knowledge. And without personal knowledge, the agents, representatives, attorneys, it means nothing. You have to have personal knowledge. You and your client always have personal knowledge. I learned this from an attorney. He said, you have the personal knowledge, they don't. You got the upper hand.
All right. Thank you so much for that, guys. This has been great. This has been very educational. I learned a few more things myself tonight. Again, we're going to go ahead and close, guys. Thank you all for coming through and supporting the stream. Be sure to hit the like button before you leave. Share this out with someone you think will be can use this information. Mr. The Paternity Coach, Mr. Cornell Smith, you can reach him at thepaternitycoach.com, where you can get the book, and you can also book a consultation with him. And Mr. Nelson's YouTube channel is the Drama Therapy Hub. Be sure to go over and subscribe to his channel as well. All right. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I hope you learned something from this stream. And if you do, hit the like button. Thank you so much again, and y'all have a good night.
Good night, and peace be with you all.
Good night.
Peace.
Good night.
You're watching Gale at Night.